nutrition education. How do we find out the best quality feed for our livestock?
Education is always evolving, right? Or you should be evolving with it. There are a lot of people in colleges, especially, um, different, even like some of the government run stuff like locally, we've got Fort Keogh, which is an experimental station for cattle. And they're working on this stuff all the time. What's the best? What works best in different conditions and different age classes? I mean, that's something that's always been at the forefront of getting better production and healthier cattle, better cycling of your heifer or first time heifers, and get them to catch the first time for conception. Some of your cows with breed back, all of those are issues, and a lot of them are based in nutrition. If you don't have good nutrition, you're not going to have some of those higher rates of conception. You're not going to have healthy cattle. All of that is just really common sense. But I can remember my dad and my grandpa, they always did things because it had been a trial and error. They didn't have a lot of, especially my grandpa, there wasn't a lot of help there, or, certainly you didn't even have a, telephone, television, that kind of stuff.
No internet access for sure,
No,
where
oh
we
God,
we're
no.
able to Google everything, and it's like a
Yeah,
worldwide encyclopedia.
it is. No, and that's the good part of some of the technology that we have. And literally, I grew up without a telephone. Dad grew up without a telephone. My grandpa certainly they had a telephone. I mean, we got one. I think my folks got one 4 years after I graduated from high school. So we just didn't have that infrastructure like we do today. That everybody packs around in the palm of their hand. They can get any information they want. Of course, the source of that is something that needs to be checked as well. But um, your county extension agents are really, really good resources for that. Some of your feed stores are very good. Some of those that are in the business for feed. I was, kind of disappointed. I mean, I was in a local place that sells everything from the nuts and bolts to oil to shirts to cattle feed and vaccines. And I was asking for a vaccine. It was a couple of years ago for preconditioning. And I told them I wanted it with Somnus. And they said, well, what is that? And this is their animal health specialist. And I had to explain what that was. And they're like, oh, yeah, I should be reading up on that. And I'm like, yeah, you
Yep.
should. So again, just because they're there in person or posing something doesn't mean it's correct. But if you go to your right sources, you can. So I've had a lot of really good help with the knowledge you've got, and then you look at what is in front of you. Anymore, we're really good about labels. That's one thing that the government, I think, has done pretty well at. It's only as good as the enforcement of it. What's really is on the label, really what's in the bag. So, um, but comparison shopping, and just because something is cheap does not mean it's necessarily good. But just because it's expensive doesn't necessarily mean it's good. I had some mineral, and we like to, of course, be as natural as we can. Um, had a neighbor friend, really good friend of ours, that tried some all natural, and it was basically mined. It was really supposed to be really good natural type of mineral, and so we tried it one year, and man, that was not what we wanted. Our cattle did not flourish as well. We still had a good conception rate, but I think mainly that was because we tend to be heavy on our bull to cow ratio.
Right.
Um, so we made up on that end. But man, that was one year, and I quit using that mineral. Never went back. Some of the minerals that are there have some stuff in them that are not what you would want to stick in a cow. Um, some of them are, they're carbon, and they get some of that where they cleaned out smokestacks in some kind of industrial process, and they add that in there. And so you could have some heavy metals in that stuff. You got to be very, very careful what's there. But with that said, feed ratios have been taught in, say, FFA courses. Dad was in FFA when he was in high school and got a lot of good information there that are lifelong type of baselines that you can use, and they're fairly well proven. And I think that's probably gotten even better today. I had the old tried and true methods of fattening some cattle, some of these steers for customers, and we had really, really good success with it. But I'm always wanting to do better. I mean, just a better product. And so I was talking with a local feed salesman who has his own business. That's what they do. It's selling feed. And explaining what I wanted him to do, I was talking to some of the processors saying, who's got the best taste in meat? What are they doing?
Right.
Duplicate what somebody else is doing, beg, borrow, and steal their information. And that's something that's a little bit, it's almost like it's proprietary in some ways, because people have a good product. They don't want to share how they got it. And I don't blame them. Don't blame them a bit. We do the same thing with some methods on training our horses. There's some things that we don't show people, or nobody's around when we're doing it, because it is so simple and it's so effective. Why share that? You want people coming to you for your product. So anyway, work with anybody you can and talk to them, and explained what I wanted to do with him with his feed salesman. He says, I think you can do this. And he gives us a product gets a product for us. He says, this has been used a lot. And people are not using it quite as much because, it's just a little bit, the new shiny toy is available. And he said, it's always been a really good feed. We tried it. And if we never changed anything now, I would be satisfied with what we're doing. I mean, it is very, very good. So, but it doesn't mean there isn't something better out there too. And we'll just, keep an ear out. But it's all about having some base knowledge. And I'm not too proud to ask people, hey, what are you doing there? That looks really good. There's some value to changing what you're doing. We normally don't use lick tubs for extra protein in our herds, especially in the wintertime or in spring. There's a lot of lush grass. And I think part of that is we've got some really decent genetics. We've got some good grass. And when we feed hay, we're feeding really good, decent protein hay and clean hay. And I think that keeps us from having to supplement as much. And the mineral is in front of them all the time. Mineral, salt, trace minerals, they have free choice. They can take what they want. And it's interesting to watching their consumption, what they will consume at different times of the year. They will hit, for instance, a sulfur block or a salt block with sulfur in it much more at different times than they'll hit like the cobalt block or the trace mineral block. But the trace mineral block doesn't seem to get hit as hard because I'm also mixing salt into the regular loose mineral. But there are times when they'll just go after something, and I think it's based on partially the type of grass or the age of the grass or the aging process, the curing of it. Is it fresh? Is it now starting to cure, getting dried out? Is it all dry? All of those things I think make a big difference in that, and what they're looking to satisfy their bodies with, whether they're pregnant or not. I mean, I think that all makes a difference. And I'm not an experiment station, only in practical matters, So, but I do notice it and try to respond to it and keep it in front of them. If they want it, give it to them.
Now, some information in agriculture gets outdated. For example, I think it's a great example because it's shown our evolution since like the 50s, 60s, especially the 70s and 80s, to now, which is the use of pesticides and herbicides and how toxic they were and the repercussions for that in the environment. Everybody uses the greatest example of bald eagles. The reason why the population dwindled so much was because the eggs were soft and they burst.
Yeah, DDT. Yep.
Yeah, and it was all from stuff like that. And it was in the ground, it was in the water, it was in the animals and the creatures that they were preying upon. And it showed the the toxicity and the levels that it can go and how it can impact everything around us. Since then, we've evolved to better processes, better uses of chemicals, what to use and what not to use, and ratios. And Braden has talked about that a couple of times as well. Where are some things that you have seen that you have been re-educated on or gotten better insight and changed things? Or are there places that you've specifically gone to or heard or seen or just got it relayed to you that you were like, oh, I need to go check that out and let's relook at how we do this process?
Well, I mean, you kind of touch on that on a little bit of everything. You always got your ear open for, what works for somebody else, would it work for us?
Right.
One of the big ones I think is you got to control your weeds. They'll choke out everything in some areas, and everybody has weeds around their buildings. I mean, it's just because it's a high traffic area. You got buildings that are, creating a little bit different environment, getting a lot of water off of the roof sheds and then in the shade, different things like that. You'll come up with some things, and so in your pastures, you don't want that to spread. You don't want to put that in a hay or in a bale or having things, uh, foraging on that in a corral system and then taking them out and they're pooping it out in your pastures. So the use of some of the pesticides, or well, not pesticide, but more herbicide, we're talking about the plant side of it, is something that's really it's more and more of an exact science, I think. And the issue is not overdoing it or doing not doing it onto labels. It used to be like, this is good. It calls for, so many ounces per acre, and you're measuring your sprayers. I know guys that were just throwing it in. I mean, literally say, how much do you add to your tank? And go, about 3 glugs out of a 2.5 gallon jug. That is not
Thanks.
very exact, but I was saying, oh, more is better. Well, no, more is not
No.
necessarily better. And so, causing resistance, and resistance was not something that was really known much about too much, in the 40s, 50s, a tiny bit, but you can see, and it's in everyday vocabulary now, where you'll talk about resistant kochia, for instance, on some pastures and fields, and you can see, you watch a freshly sprayed field or one that's been sprayed well, and you'll still see something come up that they're spraying for, and then it gets, for instance, like kochia, like tumbleweed, it'll take off, Russian thistle, and you'll see a streak of wherever that wind blew that, you got fresh stuff being scattered, seeds, and they're growing the next year, and it is resistant. Using those labels like they're supposed to be, or the products like they're supposed to be used on the label, is pretty important. Some of the things that have high resistance, I mean, we're not using, Banville, things like that.
Some technical issues. We're going to try and conclude this and see if we can wrap it all up.
So I was talking about, collateral damage using some of your herbicides and overusing them, and some of the, high potency of them that can cause collateral damage, like the microbes in the soil, and not be healthy for the desirable plants. But I think we're getting better and better about that. You don't want some of those resistant or really potent things that are in the soil to stay in the soil. You kind of want to have those dissipate as well. So I think we're still learning. We've got a lot to learn. We're early in this, the use of it, really, and there's so much more to learn. So it's just a matter of trial and error, and depending on some of the good science that's done, that is more of a pure science for its sake, and not for some other agenda, I guess, is the
Yeah.
way to do it. So you got to be careful with that. So that's really one of the big ones, is I think how we use that and how we apply it. Any of the information that you got that you need, I mean, it goes to all aspects of it, whether it be your plants for feed, whether it be for, some of your own veterinary work that you do, calving, breeding. I mean, there's all aspects of it. You've got something to learn about, and we're getting really, really good at some of those, and some of them are still pretty new.
Yep. That's us always relearning or learning more when it comes to ranching. So with that, we will take that conversation and put it out to pasture.